I didn't know how soon I'd get to the subject that I have tonight, but you're going to see its relationship and its relevancy to everything that we're discussing. Very often, we never talk about reincarnation, and it's an important part of the work. We let it linger. We're only concerned about us. Maybe your mother goes and you say goodbye to her, but you never think that she's coming back. How will I keep my eyes open for her? And what about my little brother? You mourn. The family has a terrific readjustment to make when he goes. And these little things that happen in our life that are so big to us, we're all upset. One person goes and 5 people have to make changes. We never associate anything divine to that. We wish that he or she was still with us. It never occurs to us that this is part of a divine plan. Perhaps if we knew it as a divine plan, we would see it differently and feel it differently and see the purpose behind some of it. My experience has been very unusual. I've spoken about it once, but it's relevant to tonight. You never expect to be reunited with someone who was close to you, who disappeared. When it happens, you're kind of puzzled yourself. And that's what happened to me. But it didn't just happen. Something else happened. And I think it illustrates a point that can be quite instructive to us and may awaken certain thoughts of your own in certain ways that you may have even suspected and not known about. I have been an orphan since the age of 2. And incidentally, my father went when I was 6, so there was me gone, all alone, at the age of 2, and then at the age of 6 with the father gone. And I've never missed my parents except as a fact to think of. I've had excellent care, brought up in a fine home and all that stuff. People loved me, and I didn't miss anybody. Now, at the age of 2, to lose your mother, you don't expect to meet her at the age of 72. At least I didn't. And one day, I guess I was about 72, that's 70 years after it happened. And I recall that my dad had a little locket, a little cigarette case with a picture of his wife who had died. And there was a picture. I saw it a few times. In fact, I took charge of the cigarette case later, although I wasn't putting cigarettes in it. I liked to look at it occasionally. So it became implanted in my mind. That wasn't why I looked at it. I looked at it because it was a picture of my mother, whom I had never seen, never. And there she was, smiling out of the cigarette case, a very lovely lady. She was young, she was 20 or something. She had on a hat, and it was a tight-fitting hat, like they wore in the 20s. And she looked very clever and very smart and very chic. And that was my mother. She herself today doesn't even know that she was a book buyer at Gimbel's. And she had all the good books. She had Shakespeare and Oliver Wendell Holmes, Kipling, so on. I mean, I had a bookcase of the books that she had, but she didn't know she had. So this is the picture. Until one day. And I meet this woman now in her 30s. Young enough to be my granddaughter. She's in my class, in fact. And I say to her, she says to me, hello, hello. Just, that's all. We passed a little chit-chat. Suddenly, in the back of her, and she doesn't know it, in the back of her, sort of in the sky, in the ceiling of the room, this picture comes to my mind. This picture that was on my father's cigarette case. And it just stays there in this hovering. And I see it, I see it, I see it, I can't not see it. And I look at this woman, I get a suspicion. I don't tell anybody about it because I think I'm crazy. And one day, somewhere, I don't know where, in a class, or somewhere I can't remember, a voice behind me is talking to me, and it's this woman, and she's saying, out of nowhere, I'm your mother. And I don't even look at it when I hear that. It just puzzles me. Now, I tell you this story because you wonder what Spirit had in mind. The woman wasn't being brought back to tell me she's my mother. She was brought back to join something that is very important, something in which I'm involved, and to either lend her efforts to it, some way with a dovetail. At this late stage. And I think it's one of the miracles that I have to face. Although I take it slow, we have done work together now. And the work we have done has been quite unusual. And I see why, from my point of view, she was brought back. I see from her point of view, not as clearly, but I see from my point of view how my work wouldn't be the same. Now it works as smoothly as you can imagine. Just like any other student, she fits into the class. And always when I'm talking, I'm aware that she is present. And I've tried to authenticate certain things about us to be sure. I've been able to authenticate it. This woman came to Florida. To Kauai. She wanted to go. She said, "Can I go to Kauai?" "What are you going to do there?" "I have my classes there. It's being ripped by storm. It's not a safe place to be. You've got 2 children. What are you going to do there that'll be good for you?" "Well, I'll look after your work there, your home." Now that's kind of strange, to go into a tornado or a hurricane to say to a man, I'll take care of your affairs there. It's the last place you're going to want anyone to come. Well, I said, what about your children? Well, we'll leave them at home. And I know this is a tight family. They never leave each other. You would leave your children and go there to fix my business transactions? Yeah, I want to do that. Why do you want to do it? Well, isn't that what a mother is supposed to do? It's very shocking. So, she said, I have the qualifications for it. And she came to Hawaii, fixed my affairs. Now, while we were there, things happened of a spiritual nature. Beside the business. To think of a little girl, or I did think of her as a little girl, tending to the affairs in business, which are kind of difficult at times because people, when they're giving away money, are very careful. This girl, whom I hadn't known before, went out and collected $500,000 for me, which I promptly put into a home when I got back. Now, in the process, we had certain spiritual experiences which were most unusual and which have carried on in such a way and are continuing to carry on that I'll talk about it a little bit. It turned out that this young lady was capable of healing work. And you don't bump into people who are capable of healing work. You have to teach them. Well, whatever she learned, she didn't learn from me. She learned it by herself and has been able to do good healing work. So that now we have our regular healers, several of them, plus this lady. I said to her, would you be willing to share your experiences? And she says, well, I don't really like to, because it's got to be done in such a way that, I'm not talking about spirit as if I'm talking about anything in the world. I have to be very careful. First of all, what I say, who I say it to. And so I persuaded her to say it, even though she has to be careful about it and say only those things that she feels she should say. If she were to tell you that she had been my mother, I would never have accepted it unless I had had this photograph, and unless I had heard her speak, unless I had heard her mannerisms, unless I found myself thinking the same way she was thinking about certain things. I think she's a very welcome addition to our work. And later I'm going to ask her if she'll say a few words. I think it may be very instructive to certain people, very important to some people. She has, since being here, she has been here longer than I have. Yes. Not Chicago, I mean Santa Cruz. I have come to her town. The healing work she does is not the usual kind. You don't say, I have a cough, and she works and heals the cough, or on this and on that, and she heals it. Her kind of healing is different than even mine. And it's a very deep conversion of some type in her. What impressed me was I said to her, will you put down what you think about healing? She wrote these. I read one line, then I stopped. I was mystified. That line was the secret of what I do in healing. One line. I'll read it to you. I listen beyond death. I stood around all morning repeating it to myself. I couldn't believe it. I listen beyond death. Do you see what that is? Do you see how that fits exactly what these two women did in the Bible for the Immaculate Incarnation? The Immaculate Birth. When you get into your quietness, you go so far and you try to contact or... But if you go beyond death, that's quite a deep contact. In the first place, you're going beyond death, which, where would you go? And yet, there is a place beyond death, which is just automatic to that particular healer. And if a certain individual had died and you wanted to heal him, you'd go beyond death. If a person is well or in this world and is dying, you still go beyond death. The place to go for the healing, we hadn't found out specifically what we were doing, is beyond death. And when you analyze it, that's where the healer has to go. Because what is beyond death? Beyond the illusion of death, beyond the belief in death, to life itself. And to see that word, that's where I go for my healing. It just shook me up, because I said to myself, who realizes that? Who in the world realizes that? I had just come through some healing that I had done, and that's where I had been. I didn't know I was beyond death. I didn't phrase it that way. But I had got out of this false life, and I really was there, but that isn't how I phrased it. And yet that's how you must think of it. So I go beyond death. Beyond death is the spirit world. Beyond death is life. And you've got to bring this life to that patient. I'd like you to look at yourself or someone you're trying to work with and see them. To see them in such a way that what you see in your consciousness is not the person who's stumbling around or says it's hurting here, it's hurting there. You're going beyond incarnation. You're going back to source, where life is. And you contact life there. And it translates to a healing for this person walking the earth. You'll find if you've been involved with healing, and you probably are, and you're probably a little stuck sometimes, you try putting your consciousness beyond death. I know I've been there many, many times, but I never phrased it that way. And if anyone is in the healing business, all your healings happen beyond death. And here I find it in this little summary that this lady brought to me. I'm amazed still, because it means so much, and says it in the quickest possible way. You'll find that the healer has a way of getting something from the invisible that brings about the healing. And as you try to figure it out, if that person can get from the invisible what is necessary to heal something, why can't I? Why can't you? Why can't we? We can, but we don't know what to get and how to get it. But it's there. So we'll discuss healing a little bit. The healer has one advantage. The healer knows that you are perfect. The healer is not trying to make you perfect. You are. And if you were not, you wouldn't be healed. The fact that you are healed when you're healed means that your perfection is always present, though invisible. Spirit is the name of your perfection. The healer has to touch your invisible spirit. That means going beyond death. Because in your human life, you don't touch the spirit. That's your problem. You live with spirit only at times. If you could live with spirit always, you would live beyond death. And beyond death, you would find the perfect, invisible spirit of your being, which is what we're going to find in the fifth round. Now, when we stand in the consciousness of that individual, we have to leave our consciousness of person. What good am I as a person? I can't heal you. I can give you a haircut and a shave, but I can't heal you. My spirit is all that can heal you. And if I'm dividing myself between spirit and matter, that's how I'm going to divide you. I have to be pure spirit. So, how do you lose your material self? And in losing it, will you need healing? After all, what has to be healed? Only your material self. So then, the way to heal is to first divorce yourself from this world. When you are prepared to maintain the spiritual consciousness, so let nothing enter in, then you can turn and offer your healing service to the individual who has not yet done that. I wish you would consider one case now. Maybe it's your own, in which something is missing and you can't locate it. You wonder, where is my healing and why don't I get it? And I'm going to tell you right now that you don't get it yet because you're still in the material world. You may be studying spirit, but you haven't given yourself totally to it. I have never healed a spiritual person. They don't need it. The spiritual person is spiritually perfect. The only healing you do, or anyone can do, is of a material self. And our function is to lift ourselves from the material self into the spiritual. Anyone here who needs a healing needs a material healing. And only a person who has found the power of spirit can really bring about the perfect healing of your problem. We have found a great deal of healing in a number of students scattered around the country. I think one of the least appreciated and one of the best is here, and I'd like her to give you an idea of some of the healing she's turned out. I know she'll feel immodest, but I find that in many cases she's done the work that more experienced hands couldn't handle. Not that she hasn't got the experience, but I don't know how long she's been healing, maybe 15, 20 years, maybe 25, I don't know, she can tell us. But you've all spoken to her, Doris. And Doris doesn't say much about being a healer, but she's done some phenomenal work. And I'm thinking of some cases that I know about. I probably know about most of them, but my memory is not what it used to be. And I know about several that are, well, now you take an AIDS patient. This doesn't happen usually. An AIDS patient recovers. And a severe case, and a long-standing case. I don't even know if Doris likes to talk about it, but I've asked her if she would, and she finally consented. And I'd like her now to tell us a little bit about what she has done in the healing work, and then tell you what you can do to improve your capacity to be healed, and maybe your healing capacity to heal others. Would you do that, Doris? Would you let us have some of the exciting things that you have done? Do you want to talk from here, Doris?
Is my voice prepared? You don't say no to this stuff.
I know you don't.
You know you don't. To him. I wanted to mention there were two fellows in San Francisco, dear ones. I didn't know them previously. They were not longtime friends. They came as to present the problem that this one of them had HIV and then it had blossomed into AIDS. You can hear me now, can't you? I'll have to admit that when it first hit me, I had to be sure that I didn't have any bigotry. The churches, have all this blaming going on for this particular disease. I had to get completely away from anything of that kind and just accept the pure spiritual individuality, identity of both of them, actually. And I remember telling them so often not to walk down the street with the other gay people. Don't identify with groups if you want spirit. And I said, let's not be gay, and then thinking of myself, let's not be straight, let's be spiritual. And one of the fellows was a pretty good student and called often for more support. As a result, the HIV patient was lifted out of 5 times. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the pneumocystiosis, the lung thing that they usually die with once they've had it. There became a detached retina, and the body, instead of losing weight, the body gained weight, and they decided it was well enough to fix the detached retina with a laser, which they did. The kidneys began to fail at one time, and they decided, well, this individual had had this disease so many years, and the doctors figured if you've had it that many years, you're going to go anyway. So they didn't flush the kidneys. They didn't try to do anything about that in the hospital. And the partner called me, and he said, this is what the problem is. And I said, well, let's work together. And the kidneys began to work again. The doctors kept saying to the patient, whatever you've got going for you, be sure it keeps, keep in contact with it, because it's wonderful. We can't do for you what is being done for you. And this went on for a long time, and I'll make that very short. Eventually, that individual did pass on, but not with AIDS, but with a disease that his father had died of. He knew that full well, and I was the last one to talk with him in the hospital, and he said, I'm really afraid of God because I'm gay. Now, we had worked for 2.5 years speaking about God, trying to encourage him to read or to listen to tapes. He would do it a little bit. Oh, yes, he believed in God, and he'd even had some spiritual experiences. But that innate fear there, we never heard from. Not even his own mother knew this, and they were very close. Okay, so here's the partner. Been with this individual for more than 8 years. Never taken the test for HIV. Just refused it. And it was about a year after the partner passed on that he had a small infection that was not clearing up. And the doctor said, it's time. We've got to have this test for HIV. And so that one phoned me and said, we're going to do this. We have to look at this thing. And he said, I want your help. Now, this is a pretty good student, not necessarily in an infinite way, but of spiritual matters and the trust in God. Again, we went to the spiritual identity and the impossibility of there being anything wrong in God's kingdom. I like to know that patients have never gone through that so-called Adamic fall, but they're always in the kingdom of heaven. That's where I see them, and under the laws of God, under no other laws. And The doctor, we found out later, was absolutely sure this individual had HIV. And they took the test, and he had none. And I was very grateful for that one. And he has a whole new life. There was a case some time back of a lady in Canada who called me because of a problem with cancer. And she had the indentation in her body, and the blood was showing, and the doctor had said, yes, you've got this, and we want to put you in the hospital right away. And she said, oh, I just don't want to go in the hospital. She'd been a metaphysician in the past, and so now she called me for help. And I will admit, a lot of letters went back and forth of the persuasion that no such disease of any kind like that could exist. God did not make death. Herb brought that out to us some time back in the teaching. He found it in the Wisdoms of Solomon, that God did not make death. And we based our work largely on that and her true identity. And her symptoms went away. And in 3 months, she was so much better. She was moving around. And I said, now would you go back to the doctor? Why? Because we need some confirmation here. We want to know. And I want you to know what has happened. And she went to the doctor. And the doctor examined her, and he said, I don't know where it's gone. He said, you had it. It was there. He said, my records prove you had it, but you don't have it now. And the nice part about that one was that 10 years later, she wrote me and said she was still free. If I can take just time enough for one more.
Go ahead, Doris.
It's on a different subject. And I think it's so wonderful that this work is so practical. Not only for your bodily ills. My goodness, I've been raised from the dead, literally, by this work. Not once, but a couple of times. And each time I gained tremendous spiritual wisdom out of it. So never be afraid if you've got a problem yourself. It's not a sign that you're not spiritual. It's a sign that you're to take up God's opportunity there and find out what you can learn about spirit, about God, about the nature of spirit. And that's what we used in this case, where a young lady had been a hotel manager, big hotels, like the Hilton and so on. And she was so good, believe it or not, there was a group of managers of other hotels that began to blackball her. And they didn't want to have to compete against her success. And pretty soon she was out of a job and couldn't get another one. They wouldn't even look at her. Lies, of course, were being told about her. Well, in the meantime, she was out of a salary. She hawked all of her jewelry at a pawn shop to get more money. The last I knew, she'd sold her washer and dryer to try to keep going. And she was at a point, really, of having to take bankruptcy. And she was going to another city in order to do this, hoping that this board of directors for which she wanted a job from, that's not said very well, but would not know about this. Well, sure enough, the bankers did hear about it, even if it was in another city. And they said to her, you're going to be handling a lot of money, and we think it's proper that you tell the board what you're doing about bankruptcy. Well, it infuriated her in the first place, and she called me. And she said, I don't want to just get up there and tell them everything. And I happened to be in a real good spot spiritually. I was in just a real high realization. And all I could say to her was, Spirit doesn't do that. And she was very quick to grasp all of that. She'd had some spiritual background, and she just accepted it wholly. In 2 hours, 2 people called her and said, there's something wrong. Why don't you come and tell us? Well, she'd only known them 2 months. And we want you to come over. No, she didn't want to come over. No, you must come over. You must tell us what's wrong. So she went over and told them. And inside of 2 hours, she had $20,000, a new car, money enough to get her jewelry back, eventually a new home, and a new job. Just by knowing that Spirit doesn't do this naughty stuff. Just doesn't. put you under the gun like that. It just won't. One last patient, I'll go on because we could talk all night. An infinite way student had seemingly a heart problem. And she sought a doctor's opinion, and he said, you've got to be in the hospital right away. And they put her in the hospital. She hardly had time, well, she didn't even have time to go home. They wouldn't. They said, your heart is so bad, the valve is so bad, that you'll die if you go back home. She said, well, I've got to take care of my cat. No, you can't do it. You can't go. You just can't go. So she called, and I said, let's just stay with the I am. And I said, don't pay any attention to what the doctors are saying. And they were going to do an angiogram first to make sure where the valve was and all this. And I said, answer the doctors, but don't pay attention to what they're doing. Stay with Spirit, and I'll stay with you. And they got that tube up her, and the doctor stood back, and believe it or not, the nurses began to chuckle. And the doctor said, I don't know how I could have been so wrong. You've got a perfect valve. And they sent her home that afternoon. I could tell you about a lot more, but it's just the practicality of this is so beautiful. It doesn't matter what the problem is, employment or relationship problems, it is practical. And healing of the physical, the so-called physical self.
Okay, Professor.
From the teaching of this
I knew that Doris would give us an inside viewpoint of what the healer goes through, and what the healer has to do is stand fast, as you found out. The healer can never admit that there's anything to heal. The healer is just that way. This is what you hear on the surface from a person who lives it day in and day out. And Doris has been doing it for, I don't know how long, 15 years, 20 years. And this is what Doris does. Now, the people who have gone to Doris had no way of doing anything that they had to do. They were stymied. Just up a tree. And you come to Doris and you find that she don't see any upper tree stuff. All she does is see truth. So it's nice to have an infinite way student who has gone far enough to correct the impression that imperfection is in God's universe, and is able to prove certain facts about imperfection and to show it's not there. I want you to know that the things that you feel at times can be overpowering, but you've got that mind. That's what is overpowered. Would you say, well, my mind is overpowered, but my body is overpowering my mind. Look at my body. Well, that's what the healer doesn't see. The healer does not accept your body because you don't have one, but you insist that you do. The healer knows that your body is the Spirit of God, and that your body, which shows forth, is not the Spirit of God. It's about two illusions away from the truth. And the healer sees through these illusions just by knowing they exist, and can get right to the function of what you must be in a way that brings about healing. Now, Jesus never missed a healing. And his secret was very simple. He was in God's universe, and God's universe is perfect. Well, he saw, didn't know they were in God's universe. They all thought they were in the world. And the world does not exist. It's built out of our overlapping mental attitudes. It isn't here. We're in the kingdom of God every day. And the kingdom of God always has perfect individuals. We think we're in the world. We think we live at that address. We think we live here. We think we hide behind this. We think people don't see us and so forth. We come out. We don't know how the truth of us doesn't resemble what we show forth. Myself, I'm only looking at someone who's going to continue living in illusion. I've got to look at myself as I am, not as I appear. Yourself you will never see with your human eyes. And you'll never see it in the mind, which looks at the self. You've got to go beyond death to see yourself. You've got to find the way to get beyond death. Yourself doesn't grow up by degrees as people do. This year I'm bigger, and next year I'm bigger, and next year I'm bigger. And at my age of 45 or 50, I start to level off, and then I start to go down. That's not the truth of a spiritual being. That's only in the material world. We're looking at the full sense of self, which does all that. We know all the charts that the doctors give us are about the human beings. God didn't make any. Do you see how completely different our life has to be than what it appears to be? Now look at your ailment again. Look at what you're going to conquer. What you've made up your mind, I will conquer this before I go. And now let's go beyond that. Collect yourself quietly. Don't stop at that physical barrier and consider you've got to do something about it. Get to the self that does not live in the physical form. There is such a self. There is a way of getting to feel the purity of being. Suddenly you're not in the physical self. Can you start to feel the living substance of your being? I have no physical structure whatsoever. I am completely a physical self. This body they see, that's not my being. I have no bones. I even have no heartbeat. I do not breathe. I am spirit, free. When you make your conversion, it'll be at a time away. But there'll be a moment when you can feel a different you. And that different you isn't sitting here. You're not localized. When you feel that there's something of you that isn't here, it extends somewhere beyond. You're really infinite, but we're getting there. When the self of you can feel it has stepped out of a body image, a confining little area. When it can say, I'm no longer in that image. I have released it. I'm beginning to feel a new freedom. A freedom that I can't imagine what it's like, because somehow I don't feel I'm in the body. I don't know where this freedom goes. There's an area here that isn't tied down. It isn't on the earth. It isn't in the sky. It's just me everywhere. There's an everywhere me. Then you're beginning to feel the spiritual reality of your being. One day there'll be a little light inside you. It's always there, but you're becoming aware of it. What is this light? You can feel that if you're a child of 8. I feel the light, Mommy. And this light, that's really me. It starts to free you. Of course, that's what your congested lung is made of. But it's a congested lung. Now, as I feel the light, I feel a little less of the congestion. And sometimes you won't even know there's a congestion. The light will shine right through. Oh, it's an invisible light, I know. But to those who have the capacity, they see this invisible light. Suddenly, you become aware that the invisible light is who you are. Not just a little square inch or a square yard. The light has no ending. It has no beginning. Light is everywhere, and you are everywhere. When you begin to feel things of this nature, there's something happening that heals. The tired flesh feels the invigorating presence of the invisible light that you now feel. Things that are wrong tend to become slowly right. In one day, you can lose 10 years. You can look at your toe tomorrow and something's gone that was there. The light is a healer because it is the truth of you. The light is who you are. The light is as perfect as the God who shines through you. It's a funny thing, though. You don't have to tell the light where to go. You don't have to say, my back needs some light, or my foot needs some light. The light seems to know you better than you know yourself. The light shines in the darkness. Always. And as you become aware of the light shining in the darkness, you are being led into the great secret of life. The light of God is omnipresent. Even if you thought you were dying, the light of God is right there. It's your awareness of it that releases the power of it. The more you are aware of it, not through talking about it, not through saying I know it, but through the conscious inner knowledge of the presence of the light. As you become aware of it, its life unfolds you. It even heals you of those things which were your problem only because of your ignorance of the light. It was never absent. And then the great discovery that I am the light. All the years that I had been the light, unaware. Say it to yourself, please. I am the light. You don't have to go anywhere to find it. I am the light. And right where you are. That's why you are. Because I am the light. We want to develop our understanding of truth so that we are always self-sustaining. We are always the child of God. We always have a full, complete spectrum of God's abilities at our service. Now, what is the knack of converting every quality of God into a living substance where you are? One is accepting that God is your being in the full, and that now is God. Now where I stand is God. God won't appear there because you make a statement. But why will God appear in the form required for one person and not for another person? Everyone has the complete God presence. Why can this person summon God? Why could Jesus? Why couldn't Nicodemus? We all have the same qualities. You don't have one quality less than Jesus had. Did you know that? Our awareness of the quality brings it into being. It is always there. It has to be recognized. It has to be felt. It has to be known. And that's what our training is about, to develop the qualities of God which are in us. If you haven't developed your qualities, say to someone who has, tell me about this. How do I do it? What do you do? I want to develop that quality. Because there's nothing missing. All that is missing is our awareness of what is. In this vast, invisible self, everything that the Father has is ours. Nothing lacking. And if you know that everything is yours, you're going to find it. But you can't give up. Things don't yield that easily. But everything of the Father is yours and mine. And we maybe go out chasing what people say we haven't got. We will find it because it can't go away. One of the bigger problems is the identification of the problem. You identify it physically. I don't know who you're talking to when you say it, but nobody's listening. We don't have a physical problem. We have a physical belief. We don't have a physique to have a problem. Something in the way you identify your problem nails it down and makes it the problem. See that you speak a little lighter when you identify the problem. You don't have a broken rib. That's how they'll mark it. You don't have a faulty heart. That's how it'll be listed. You don't have a heart. You don't have a liver. You don't have a lung. You're not going to heal concepts. But when you can be brought to see that I am not a physical being, I am spirit, you will find that most of the physical ailments cannot attack. They're only attacking your belief. I am not a physical being. I'm not telling that to my doctor. I'm not telling that to any of the medical men who are taking care of my body. I'm knowing that I am pure spirit. Can you know that? Your physical foot can't hurt you. You don't have one. Your spiritual foot won't hurt you. It's the belief in the physical body that makes possible the fact that we think we are being invaded by germs, inadequacies. But as we loosen this rigid belief, you'll find a way if you know you've got to do it. You find I can't have a problem. I have to have a body first to have it. Now it's very radical to tell a person you don't have a body. But we have to work on having a spiritual body. For me to know I have a spiritual body, and it's not this size. It's universal. And I can't know what knowing this will do for me until I know it. You're making a conversion. You're stepping out of belief into fact. I don't have physical lungs. I don't have a physical heart. I don't have a physical brain. And I kind of feel strange when I deny it, when I rest in the knowledge that I have something called spirit, which thinks for me. But I'll feel funny until one day, spirit will think for me. And I'll say, what's that? self of you. And I know I'm not familiar to you because you've never seen me or talked to me or anything. You lived without me, but I am the self of you. And as you open up a little and let me in, let me talk to you. I'm real. And you'll slowly drop. You'll slowly learn. There's a self of me. It's not me. It's something else. And then you realize that the self of you is not the physical self of you. You're going to go into this. You're going to awaken to it. This is the awakening. When Spirit talks to you, just a word perhaps, just thought, the first awakening of the Spirit presence making itself known to an individual is exciting. Someone else lives here. I have lived here for a long time, but someone else lives here. Yes, I am the Spirit of you. And though I am patient, and though I am waiting, though I have never interfered with your life, now, as you open to me, as you hear one word, as you feel another life stirring within you, you are coming alive. Right here on the earth, someday you will step out of this belief and form. Maybe quicker than you think. Sometimes you can't believe that the Spirit in you is alive. You feel it's alive and you hadn't noticed it before. Then there's a twitch. You think it's just another twitch. No, it isn't. It feels funny talking to a presence within you because the presence isn't within you. There's an aliveness. Suddenly something is alive beyond you. When that glorious moment happens, you are beginning to feel the birth of another selfhood. A selfhood that will shuffle off all the encrusted opinions that had been built up within you. You won't hear it at first. It's speaking to you. It's saying, I am the Spirit of you. You feel the words forming. People are going to look different to you. Please listen for this. Expect it. It's a new life, a new birth. a you that is and always has been, and it will begin to be a fade out of the you that thinks of itself as you. It's a slight changeover that develops into a larger changeover until there's a spiritual you walking the earth. It begins in a deep silence. I think we ought to pause now and look into more that we have a little later. Recently, a woman came to my home. Her husband brought her. She was about 55, she was, and I didn't examine her body with instruments or anything like that, but she told me everything that was wrong with her. Nothing was working. Everything was out of kilter. I mean, everything was out of kilter. She shouldn't be walking. She shouldn't be alive. And she was there. And we had an unusual experience with her. But I'd like someone else to tell you about it, because I think she had more of an understanding of what happened, and she had the experience of what happened. Anyway, Cheryl, I'd like you to talk if you're here. Okay. This lady, I don't even know her name, but Cheryl is going to give you the facts about it, and about anything else that you feel you want to.
Well, I think I want to start with how we're taught that the light goes so far ahead of us, and how at times that experience is felt, but it doesn't always manifest. It's like, well, gee, I know it happens, but I can't see it sometimes. In 1955, Herb Fitch met Betty Fitch, and they met one night, and I think the next day he asked her to marry him. And I think 3 days later they were married. In 1955, Pagan Sid Rafison gave birth to a girl named Cheryl. And it wasn't too far from the city that Herb and Betty had just gotten married in. And it was a while before Herb found the infinite way. And by that time, Cheryl was about 10 or 11. And Herb started coming to Sacramento and giving Infinite Way classes. And I was coming home from school and showing my parents books about Lao Tzu and Buddha and Cahill Cabran, and saying, Mom, Dad, look at this. What's going on? This is fantastic stuff. And I grew up in a very open family, but we had no organized religion, so I was very insulated from orthodox religion. And my parents were wonderful. But the reason I'm telling you this is I learned these coincidences in the last year from getting to finally spend time with Herb. And I truly believe that my consciousness was being touched at that time. He was coming to Sacramento and giving Infinite Way classes. I was growing up about 3 miles from where he was giving these classes. It shaped my consciousness. It prepared me. And I continued with a thirst that was unquenchable. And then, about 6 years ago, dear friend, the Mullenhauers in San Diego, I knocked on their door one day and I said, I've got some questions, I need some answers. Well, they handed me one of Joel's books and said, you're ready, here it is, go home, study, come back when you're ready to talk again. When I went to Kauai, I had a plane ticket a month before. I knew Herb had some changes going to come into his life, and I said, why don't you let me come study for 2 weeks and just settle in with you a little bit? He said, that sounds great. I'll meet you after St. Petersburg. Well, neither of us knew that there would be a hurricane and that there would be such dramatic changes coming in both of our lives. But there was a hurricane, and Herb called me from St. Petersburg, and he said, well, do you still want to come? And I said, of course I'm going to come. When I arrived in Kauai, the experiences that we had with the people that were trying to assist the Hawaiians was not a favorable, loving experience. And Spirit seems to take us where we're needed. And that experience was more likened to, I come not to bring peace, but a sword. I was in Kauai, I was seeing that somebody had to stand up and tell these insurance adjusters, you can't do this to people in such a vulnerable time. And with assistance and help and lots of meditation, I think we corrected some things there. And I think the Hawaiians were dealt with in a little better manner. From there, Herb and I have been brought together under the same roof and living in a spiritual household and learning things that neither of us knew we even needed to learn. And that brings me to the one healing Herb was going to have me explain to you. In San Diego, this woman came up to me and we had kind of an electric experience. There weren't words, there wasn't much exchange, but there was some kind of feeling. When we went back home, she called and said, Herb, I want to come to your house. So Herb said, sure, we'd love to have you come. When she arrived, Herb said, I'd like you to meditate with us, Cheryl. And I said, oh, that'd be wonderful. I really had a wonderful experience with this woman. In Kauai, Herb and I would get up in the middle of the night and have wonderful meditations. One night there were 2 light bodies that came as Herb and I sat on the couch holding hands, watching the electrical light storms, and these 2 light bodies danced and danced and danced all night. And even into the next morning, with my eyes open, in consciousness, they were still with me. Well, 8 months went by, and I hadn't had an experience with the 2 light bodies again. And if I could have produced an experience, I would have. But as you all know, in meditation, that isn't how it works. Well, this woman came from Arizona, and we sat down to meditate, and the next thing I knew, the 2 light bodies were there again. and they lifted her light body out of her form. Her light body was tattered and shorn and very frail, and it wouldn't have lifted if the assistance wasn't there. The two light bodies started to dance through her soul, and it was really a lovely, lovely experience. When we came out of meditation, I thought, I can't talk about this. So we smiled and said we all had a lovely meditation. And it was about 3 or 4 days before I went to Herb and said, Herb, something really amazing happened. I want to tell you about it. Well, he thought that was really lovely, and we waited to hear from this woman. Well, it had to be about 4 months. And I was at my parents' house because my mom had just been diagnosed with a brain tumor. So I was at my mom and dad's, and I get a phone call, and it was Herb, and he said, Cheryl, this woman just came to our home. She drove again from Arizona to tell me that she'd had a really miraculous healing. And I said, Herb, if I ever needed confirmation, it was today, to stand fast with my own mom. I have had no fear at all about her supposed form. And I don't understand the healings yet. They're never the same. And yet they seem to bring a lot of fruit. The one experience that I do feel like I really want to share with you is one that's supposedly didn't bring about a healing. One evening about 10 o'clock, this was a few years ago, I heard, you have to go down and have dinner. Go down and have dinner. So I thought, okay, I'll go down and have dinner. So I went to this restaurant, local restaurant that I knew a friend of mine worked at. I hadn't seen him in a while. I went in and I said, Peter, how are you? He said, oh, I'm not doing well. My sister has been diagnosed with a brain tumor and she's very, very ill. And I thought, oh, so this is why I've been called, and I'll go home and get to work. Well, this young woman passed, and she didn't have a healing. And I thought, oh, I didn't work hard enough. What happened? I have so much still to learn. It was a year later that I was in meditation, and these huge waves started coming through. And then there was a dolphin. The dolphin said, I need to enter you. I need you. And I didn't understand what this was about. And I said, well, of course, I'm one with you. What do you need? Well, this dolphin and I became one. And the next thing I knew, I was in 15, 20-foot waves. And it was really an extraordinary feeling. And it brought about a surrender that I try and stay with always. After that experience of surrender, the dolphin said, I'm Jessie. I want you to tell my mother I've made transition. I did what I was to do. You have to tell her. I didn't understand. I never knew Peter's sister's name. Well, when Herb came back to Santa Cruz with me, I needed some things done around this new house. And I called Peter. I said, Peter, I heard you were doing da-da-da-da-da. We need some help. So he came over and I said, how's your mom doing and how's your family doing? And he said, well, you know, since Jessie passed, everyone's had a really hard time. And I said, Peter, your sister's name is Jessie? And he said, yeah. Well, I couldn't say anything to Peter. I didn't know if he had a spiritual inkling in his big toe, let alone divulge anything after all the chapters I've read about secrecy. So I sat down and wrote him a card. And for about 3 months he came around and helped around the house. And finally one day he came in and I said, Peter, you want some lunch? He said, yeah. He goes, could you go to the post office and write my mom a letter? And, just jokingly, well, I had this card that I had written him. And I pulled it out of the drawer and I said, well, why don't you send her this? And I thought, if I've done this, it must be okay. 2 days later, Peter called and he said, Cheryl, I needed that. My mom needs that. And I really thank you. I don't still understand how we're to communicate the work. I find it very hard to tell people about the experiences. It sounds outlandish. It sounds a bit crazy. But for some reason, it is the only work that I know. And the only work that seems to fill my heart and my home with love and peace. And brings people like Herb Fitch into my life. It's hard to talk about. It's something that I feel like needs to be expressed in the right fertile soil. And I'm still learning how myself to do that. I'd like to read you something that might help a little bit. I listen beyond death into the life eternal. That is where we become one. I hear the voice of God, and human life is non-existent. To listen beyond death is an awareness. It frees us from mortal man. We may walk through concepts of death in the quiet. Then we realize the true order of reality. We are that which is permanent. To experience the substance is to know God aright. This is the transition of consciousness. The awareness is the permanent substance. The eternal love speaks through the silence and remains forever. That isn't about Cheryl, it isn't about Tom or Bob. It's about an infinite, invisible self that was never born and that will never, ever die. And those are the mystical things that keep unfolding. And I'm glad to at least be able to share it in this environment. It's very, very nice.
Thank you. Well, that's a different mystical experience. And I thought it would be good for you to hear that, because it's not likely that you'll hear something quite like it for a while. I think between Doris's healing and Cheryl's healing, there is a difference in approach. But the point is that in the difference of approach, the same conclusion is reached in the individual. Now, when one can heal a certain way and one can heal another way, you and I have an opportunity to look at both sides of the method of healing and to find what our affinity is. You may find that you can't go beyond death to contact something in an individual. You may find that you stay here and you work on a different level, a more mundane level for a while, and then you come out of it. But each type of healing is so unusual that when it happens, you see that there's really no limitation. Anyone who has the healing capacity is invited into that area of finding the false and being aware of the true and reinstating the true. I find Cheryl's way of doing it most unusual. I find Doris's method of doing it is most down to the needle's eye. She's careful to do her work every day so that the patient is always receiving from the healer. I wouldn't hesitate to put any case in front of either one and know that the best work will be done. It doesn't matter what their needs are or who they are. They'll be faced with a certain sense of love, a certain sense of spiritual love, a certain sense of, I see it, but I don't believe it. And they will bring to it that level of consciousness which they don't believe to exist in the material world, and they will bring it the spiritual level that will lift it. And these healings are real now. Please know that. I feel anyone who calls is going to get an opportunity to be faced with an individual who knows what is required and can furnish that in such a way that the rehabilitation will be automatic. They'll probably miss a time or two or six. The point is there will be a certain quality that comes at the problem and a certain love of you that comes forth. I myself had some of those experiences that Cheryl discussed. I was in Kauai, and I looked at the waves, and there they were. Two forms actually dancing. I saw them. I mean, it always spellbinds me when something like that happens. Because out of the world of that we know, something else appears. Saw those forms dancing for a long time. I didn't know what the significance was. But I walked out of Kauai with a complete financial healing, you might say. Anyway, the last time we saw strangeness in healing was in the forms that appear. the boy appearing in my bedroom. And I was angry at first. I was going to say, how did you get in here? Till I realized it was a spiritual form. And then I looked twice. It was still there in the dark, just staring at me. I turned away from it to give him a chance to get out. Then I turned back, and he was still there. And I was still angry. Where did he get his nerve busting into my house? He never said a word. All of a sudden, he went through the window and out. No sound, nothing. I shook my head twice, but he was there. Why was he there? What was communicated to me that I'm not aware of? I can't tell you. I don't know. I know I went out, did a class, and it was a fine class. Maybe he helped me, I don't know. But when those things start happening, something's happening to you. You can start to see that you're going to be used in some way. So this may happen to you in some way that you don't anticipate. It's always a good sign, believe me. I'd gladly invite him back if he'd come, but I don't think he's listening to me. What happens, happens when it happens because there's a purpose for it. And you're only given something that has a miraculous purpose that is fulfilled by that presence in some way. What it does is it takes us out of the mundane belief that this world that we see is going to deliver us to some godfather. No, it's not this world that does it. It's something beyond visibility in the world. Something that's always present. And we just get a little inkling of this and a little inkling of that. I guess 500 angels could have appeared in the room as well as a little boy, but they didn't. Apparently I would have been floored too much. So now, what I'd like to get across to you is that if you need some assurance, it'll come. If it's a little invisible boy who appears visible, somehow you know that something is supporting you. Something is bringing something to you. Something from another dimension. A really, truly present dimension that produces an individual that you cannot believe until you see it. Now, in this form that Cheryl read to you, in which she says in the first line, she immediately enters into something beyond death to heal. I consider that one of the most important statements I've ever read. Because it tells me that I can't heal right here. I've got to go beyond here. I'd like to impress upon you that that going beyond here is what makes it possible for you to heal. Beyond the visible, your consciousness must roam quickly, and you must let it rest there. And then things start to happen that you can't explain. let's get a final entry into the spirit and know that all of the spiritual world is present in this one spot. Where you are, where you are, where you are, the spiritual world is completely represented by your spirit. You are in touch with infinity right now. And as you dwell in your spirit, slowly becoming less human, more spiritual, you will find something opening up to you which will take you out of the world of nothingness into the glory of God. And all things become possible to you. And whatever is necessary happens to you. Always carry around the knowledge that whatever is necessary happens to you when you have attained your spiritual self. And attaining your spiritual self is not relegated to something I'm going to do in 500 years. With good luck, good concentration on where you're going, it can happen in the next minute. We want to expand our world out of this little pigeonhole that we stand in. We want the infinite possibilities all around us, because we won't call them into play. They will be sent by the Father to our spirit. The Father will work, and we will work also. We are living in a world of miracles, millions of miracles. It is the truth, the reality. And the closer you are to being the reality, the truth, the closer you are to finding that you and Spirit are one. I can't stress that enough, because whenever I see an individual flirting with truth, I know he is turning Spirit away. I thank Doris. I thank Cheryl. They both led some light into the achievements that we hope to find common among our students. They led us into an understanding of what can be accomplished. They led us into some of their perplexities to show us that no one is a finished product. Love goes a long way. Love of Spirit, which is pure. And as love is part of your attitude, your feeling, your everyday, it goes out further than you ever could imagine it. Your love comes back to you 1,000-fold. Please remember that this universe is made of love. And in moments when you feel that somehow you have forgotten to love, and you feel that is a little dark, remember, love changes that. True spiritual love, world of spiritual miracles. Be aware of them. They're all around us. Many of them will happen because you will find your spirit.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into our channel. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button below. It really helps us out. And why not share this video with your friends? Spread the word and help us reach more people. Lastly, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so you never miss a new video from us. Thanks for watching and see you next time.